All right, welcome everybody to this third episode of Patch and Crash. It's the podcast where gaming culture and life collide. I'm Hans, I'm here with Mike and Paul, and today we're going to talk about the trials and tribulations of running a live service game. But before we do that, what have you guys been playing?
Yeah, I'll go playing, pretty much the same games for this last week. Although I did pick up a bundle that I'm excited to kind of dig into. It's a bundle over at itch.io. It's called the bundle. Oh, it's a bundle for racial justice and equality. I think it's $10. You get 56 different kind of indie games. The one that's kind of I'm stuck with of late is GladioBots. Hating on, well, the PS5, that's too easy, so I'm not going to go there. I think there's plenty of funny memes that are out there on the interwebs. You know what I'm hating on is the lack of crossplay, and it's not because we don't have some of it. It's just the fact that we don't have it when I want it. And I feel like we're just too far along in this industry not to have really good crossplay across games that we want to play. And then missing, honestly, I'm missing going to the theaters. Of course, there's the COVID situation, everything else that's out there, but just seeing a movie on a big screen TV. I haven't done that in so long. I don't even remember the last movie I actually did that with. So yeah, that's what I'm playing, hating, and missing on. What about you, Paulie?
I'm still playing Dauntless. When we kicked it off a couple weeks ago, it's just stuck with me. They just had an update, so I've been trying to check that out slowly. Haven't done too much. Missing, very much like you, Mike. I'm missing kind of going outside and doing things with people. My wife and I went for a walk the other day. Ran into somebody that she works with, and it was just really nice to have a social interaction, even if it was at a distance. It was just quite nice. I mean, having these calls is good for work, but not the same. And then what am I hating on? Right now, it's been my head. I've been getting a lot of headaches. I've had headaches for years and years. I had a migraine the other day, and I've just had a constant headache for the last 4 days, pretty much. So I'm not really enjoying that right now.
Okay.
I so want to make a joke, by the way, and I can't, Paul. I feel like that's like kick you while you're down there. I'm like hating your head. We all do.
Yeah, thanks.
Hans.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I've been looking for stuff to hate and looking for stuff to miss, but I'm such a kind of positive guy. Although I don't like the way the PS5 looks. It looks cheap. Maybe it looks cooler, want to get it in my hands, but. I'm gonna hide that thing away. I'll still buy one, but it's not for showing off. I can tell you that.
Or is it? It's just a matter of who your audience is.
Yes, maybe it's a conversation starter. What's that thing? Is this the router? No, it's not the Wi-Fi router. And playing though, I've been jumping into Destiny. It's the game that kind of kicked off the topic that we want to talk about for this episode, but. Destiny just came out with a new season, and it's fun to jump back in. I haven't played since a long while ago, and I've forgotten how much stuff there is in that game. Just like the amount of quests and everything that's there for that game. And they always do this when they have some kind of weird techno jargon for stuff. So you don't get little chests or loot boxes or whatever. You get engrams, and you have to decrypt engrams to open them, and it's just like, what? Why? And every new season there's a new flora of just weird little consumables and crafting materials that have new weird names. But that game looks so good and it plays so well. Yeah, and I also wish that it had crossplay though, because like you guys are on PlayStation, not on PC, so we're not going to be able to play so well.
Yeah, but that's a good point, though. I mean, you brought up Destiny. I think that today, we're going to dive in a little bit more on the what is. It turns out live services, they're kind of hard, right? And I think you're seeing that or witnessing some of that with Destiny, which is it's a great game. They've delivered a ton of content. It's really wide. It's a deep game, but serving that well to millions and millions of people, it turns out it's really, really difficult, and certainly difficult to keep them very happy. And so. Yeah, you're seeing that recent announcement. I think it shocked a lot of us. Like we're still trying to, or at least for me, trying to make sense of what that means. But I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of peel the behind the curtains a little bit and talk about, well, why? Why would you even get to that point where you would make a decision like that? What does it mean? How do we think about some of the difficulties when we run a live service? I mean, you guys have been on some of the front lines and helping deliver on content and a lot of those service features. And I've been obviously on the side of the marketing, but let's just talk about that. Like, what is it? about service that makes it so difficult.
Right. And to kind of scroll back a little bit, just in case somebody's listening who haven't seen the announcement. So one of the things that Bungie announced recently was that they're going to be removing or putting some of the features and content they have in their vault, they call it, which basically means content that has been previously in the game that everybody's been able to play is going away. And what's made this maybe a little bit more controversial is that that's content that eventually... Well, that at one time was paid for content, right? So some people have actually paid for this. So it's been a little bit of a contentious topic. Some people have gone, on the one side and criticized Bungie really hard for this, and other people have kind of understand that their reasoning has been that the game is so large, not just like in installed size, but also in complexity. There's so much stuff, kind of like what I've experienced when I'm jumping in, that it's hard to deliver on like a slick designed product when there's so many moving parts and they all kind of interact. But games have gone through quite an evolution in the last 10, 15 years in the way we develop and ship and sell and market games. Not too long ago, before this whole digital download era, we sold games in an actual store in a box, a plastic wrap box, and it was kind of tricky to be reactive to your audience, experience with your games, right? So you built the game, and then you sold the game, and then you went on to build maybe an expansion and maybe a sequel or maybe a completely different game, kind of depending on sales numbers. Mm-hmm. And then, in the DLC era, which is, I don't know when games started, like post Steam, when Steam got traction, we started kind of monetizing games based on selling DLCs. And now we're in the era of the big titles are all sort of live service products. And I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about sort of what we mean when we say a live service game, kind of the definitions around it.
Boy,
I think go ahead.
I was going to say we're going to have three different answers, but go ahead.
But we should try to align on one then.
Let's go.
One thing I always bring up is I feel that means a live service to me means there's constant updates and there's a lot of events or new things happening at a very frequent basis. So you mentioned the DLC era, Hans, and that would be, maybe every 3 to 6 to 12 months, you might see a big update for a game that was just, here's a bunch of new content and we're done. For me, a live service means you might get small tweaks or balance changes or features or content, all of these things separately or all together, but at least consistently, like minimum kind of once a month. And I know one of the things that you brought up when we broached this topic earlier off camera, Hans, was a lot of community interaction, and I think that's really important. It's a two-way street. Because it's a live game, there's constant dialogue, there's constantly things happening. So it's a lot of just constant everything.
Yeah, I'll just it's interesting because I think that if you would have asked me 10 years ago, service just had a different definition than what it is today. And so the level of sophistication has just gotten better and better and better in what we mean. And so and rightfully so, our expectations, both at a player level and at a developer and a marketing level, are just, they've gotten better, or they've gotten higher, or they've become higher. Service meant something very different. Maybe it meant just that you would support your game post-launch, and you would actually provide maybe a DLC pack or two. And now it's not the case at all. It's, you want constant updates. You want updates on the background that you don't impact. You don't even have to push client side. You want constantly evolving programming events that feels like the game is alive today, right? And so that's the level of sophistication we're at today. And so in some ways, defining a live service is almost moot because it just will continue to evolve. Just like in 5 years from now, it'll be a different definition and a different expectation on what live service is. I will say it is interesting, like when we kind of broach this topic every time, like we always go in different directions because it's just so big, right? There's so many things that we want to go around. I look at that and I think by and large, when we talk about live service, the first thing that comes to mind is it's a good thing, right? I think. I will tell you I've started to back away from that position, and I think my answer has become it depends.
Yeah.
It really does.
Man, this
depend.
sounds familiar, Mike.
I know. This is my brand, but I don't deal with black and white. I deal with like shades of gray in just about everything, right? And I think it does depend, though. I think and there was the race to service, right? I think early days, people were like launch lead mentality. We wanted to retain engagement over long periods of time, and we wanted to evolve that experience because that's where a lot of that feedback was. And I say we, meaning the collective we of developers, marketers, and publishers, and you name it, right? That whole industry. But over time, as we've done more of that, you start to realize that, well, maybe some games are just better suited for service.
Yeah.
And actually, it makes a lot of sense to invest in that. And some games are not. And I think the problem is in the race to service, the belief was all games should have service. And I don't know that I agree with that. I actually don't.
I really don't either. I think that's why you're seeing a rise of indies in the last couple years. Not that they haven't been on the rise, but I think that even more so, I think a lot of what's getting attention, even from platform holders like Sony and Xbox, they're putting more spotlight on these are small developers, or in the case of Microsoft, going out and trying to partner with a whole bunch of smaller developers to kind of push this thing because they realize not every game can be a service game. And like you said, it monopolizes your time. So asking a player that normally would play one game a year because they just love it to suddenly be like, hey, here's 3 games that are equally as big as that one that you play, but you need to buy all of them from us. Go.
Yeah. Here, I'll say something even more controversial, and I'd love to see if, Hans, you agree with this. I think that not only does it depend that not all games should be service games, I actually think very few games should be service games. And what I mean by service games, I mean ones that, will be there for 5, 10, 15 years around. And because I think that there is the byproduct of that. And this is, I think, a more controversial opinion. And I agree with, and I honestly kind of am mixed about it, so I'm not so strong about it, but I want to throw it out there for discussion. But I think the byproduct of that is that you will suck up, there will be only a certain amount of titles that will garner the lion's share of people's time. Yeah. And oftentimes, when you get into that situation, you lose innovation and you lose risk-taking. And I think that's what makes gaming and great, is that you take risks. It's kind of the fusion of both art and technology, and that risk-taking is what drives innovation.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, look, Paulie looks like he wants to say something, but let's talk.
No, but Hans going. Yeah.
We don't have to take turns, guys. If you have a point to make, then go ahead. I mean,
Hans, like, everybody play nice. We can do this.
Go ahead, Paul.
No, for me, I think, man, I even forgot what we were talking about now. I got so focused on no, I'll save this for when Hans is talking. Then we devolved anyway. I think the risk taking is a big thing. It's like why you saw a huge rise in publishers the last 20 years ago, right? Like now you have some super publishers, EA, Activision, Ubisoft, and a lot of their games tend to fit that model because they have the marketing spend to just go after and get a whole ton of users, keep them engaged in their little universe. And then they don't want to take risks because they want that consistent revenue. So it's really interesting to see you get a lot more of that innovation, like you're talking about, Mike, from smaller titles that don't become live services.
Well, let's talk about that, though, because I think live service, we want to kind of, I think it, like I said earlier, it can be hard. And I think it is a good thing, especially when we want to support gamers over time. But how do you, let's just talk about some of the trials and tribulations of service and let's stay on the topic of innovation, though.
Well, here's the
how
thing.
do you, go ahead,
I would like to say, though, there's a big distinction. And you were kind of getting to this, Mike, where when live service games are successful, in that when they are good, that's when they have enough stuff for you to do and enough content and enough drive and enough frequent updates that players stay engaged over a long period of time. Because you make your money back when you have players engaged all the time. If this is a lifestyle choice for people, right? Mm. So they're on their League of Legends games, or they're playing Warframe or Path of Exile or Destiny, or even MOBAs. I would say that World of Warcraft is run as a service, right? It's always kind of been, but it's more now well-oiled service machine right now. But then also you have the examples of games which don't suit live services. So they would have been just fine as 10, 12, 15, 20-hour experience. But because maybe some of these publishers or developers feel like they need to compete for people's attention, so they will kind of clothe one of their games as a live service game. And it kind of looks and communicates and set the expectation of a live service game, but it doesn't fulfill those. And then that's usually an example of a pretty sort of failed experiment.
I do think there is a difference in the distinction I make between live service today, right? Definition today versus in the future or in the past, is that there's supporting your game, which is I've launched and I want to support a certain amount of features over a period of time. And let's call it standard, it seems to be at least 12 months, maybe up to 24 months, but usually at least 12 months. That to me isn't a live service. It really is just supporting your game within the first year. Live service is the games that are franchises that maybe are annualized, biannualized, whatever it is, every couple of years, and are intending to service a game over the course of several years, over periods of time. And I think there should be very few of those titles. And I think, but you are seeing the industry, right? It wasn't far long ago, 3-4 years ago, that anything north of 1 year of content was pretty challenging. But I think now you're seeing the race to, no, we need to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, how long has GTA 5 been out? 6 years? 7, 8?
Didn't it launch on PS3 and X?
Yeah,
No.
I think it did, right?
Yeah, no.
I mean, we could Google it, but we could also speculate. That's always fun.
We could. But I mean, and don't get me wrong. Like, look, Rockstar delivers great content, great experiences, and there's a reason why they've had the success that they have with GTA Online and everything else. But that's effectively just a service. And who knows when the next GTA will be out?
We were all expecting that on the PS5 launch event.
Yeah. But I think, kind of back to this point of like it's difficult, and I think you guys offer a really unique position of running a live service. I think talk to me about some of the things around running a live service. What are the considerations? What are the challenges in doing it? What are the things, because you hear the community, you're trying to run this long-time service. I mean, if I had my druthers as a player, I would say update the game twice a week. Thank you. Or at least once a week, right? But that's not easy.
No, really isn't. And that's one of the things that Bungie talked about in their little announcement. They clarified things with shipping updates to the game takes days when it used to take hours, right? Just because of not just the complexity of testing all combinations of things. And that's usually something I see in communities. People will point out a thing that is obviously broken because of an interaction with another thing. And they say, this studio just forgot and don't care about this specific thing. And that's maybe not really the case. It's just incredibly hard to QA all things in combination with other things. And since these games are usually pretty open-ended, you can kind of play different game modes where you have, maybe some abilities or weapons or configurations or whatever doesn't make sense in a specific game mode, and we notice something in the community, and then so that is absolutely a challenge. Just that takes time to ship updates, and when it takes time to ship an update, that means that you're not servicing that product. It turns into a product that has longer update cycles, and then people are gonna stop playing that game and start playing something else.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the QA example is a great one, and I think that some of the fun stuff that I know I bump up against when we're pushing updates out are our QA team, or even just some of the team itself in playtest or something, like, oh well, this issue popped up again. I'm like, we fixed that thing 6 months ago.
Yes.
Like why how is that possible? Like, code just decays, man. Like sometimes shit just goes wrong.
I do love that. By the way, that's the best line of the episode. Code just decays. It's organic. Zeros and ones. They just like.
But it's just so weird because you're sitting there like, we asked you to fix this thing before. They're like, yeah, I did that. It no longer does this. You're like, but it's obviously doing it again. Well, now it broke in a different way.
Yeah, it's a different kind of thing. Same result. You got to play Dr. House sometimes. What are the symptoms?
So I have two questions.
Go ahead.
I have two questions for you two. I think that's great. One is, okay, great. Knowing what you know about the situation with Bungie and Destiny, and you know how big and the reasons and everything else, would you make a different choice? One. And the second thing is, there are games out there that do it really well, right? Fortnite is the example that everybody, and I'm sure they just have a ton of resources, but they're not the only ones. There are many other games. Warframe, I think, is one of those, right? That has continued to kind of update the game consistently. R6 is maybe, I think, another one. There's definitely The Division is probably another one that continues to update. I don't know how consistently, but I mean, they get to a better refresh cycle. And there are definitely some folks that are leading this space and doing better. Why? So those are the two questions I'd love to get your thoughts on.
Well, I mean, it's doing sort of developing games like this requires not just like an iteration; it requires kind of a quantum leap in evolution of your game studio. You need to hire for new types of expertise. So you can't just have game designers designing games. You also have to include business analysts and analytics and people reading charts and numbers and trying to figure out what's happening there. And you need to be more data informed or data driven, maybe. And it kind of requires an organizational overhaul as well as a technical one.
I agree with that. Yeah. So, but just so I understand what you're saying. So it's not just we have to kind of get to a point where our game and our software is actually better positioned and the engine, all that stuff. Organizationally, we have to be set up well.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't have both of those pieces working in concert with one another, you're not going to be able to deliver in the same way. And you think that those organizations, I mean, we don't work there, probably have that.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. Paul, what do you think?
Oh boy, I'm gonna kind of steal a kind of page out of your book, Mike. I think it really depends on a ton of different factors. So you asked why are some of these games more successful than others? One of them will always just come down to luck. That's something in the games industry, just like in entertainment. Like things are still hit driven, right? As much as we say that you can plan around that and you can be better educated and you can be smarter and be more targeted. Yes, those help with success. But it's still a lot of this, I think, is just like, is your game coming out at the right time and does it hit the right audience just perfectly? So like some of that just drives scale of users. Because if you look at things like Fortnite or League of Legends, they sell no gameplay stuff. They all sell cosmetics. And there is a lot of data out there that shows that gameplay things drive people to pay more because they impact your gameplay in a way that gives you a benefit. As much as people hate the concept of pay to win,
right,
people will throw money at that thing. And if you want to make money, that's an area to go into. Cosmetics aren't as profitable, but you can get scale if everybody kind of like dips their toe in. And it's also a lot more welcomed by the community. So if you have mass scale and you have a kind of softer approach to monetization, these things can be profitable for you. But on the same side, if you don't have that mass scale and your customization is maybe not that interesting, you could have done the exact same thing as Fortnite and failed miserably.
Yep.
And you're like, well, what was the difference? The game just wasn't as good, or you didn't hit the right audience at the right time.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
there's so many factors.
Yeah, I agree with some of that. I do think you can engineer a higher degree of success, but I definitely think that luck, timing, there's a lot of other variables you don't necessarily control. There may be a ship window, something else. There's momentum in different ways. And so, I mean, our jobs, it's part of our jobs, right, is to mitigate some of that risk. But that still, in a hit-driven business, still plays a big part. But the one question that we didn't answer was, you get the keys to the car, to the Destiny car, the Bungie car.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I would love to hear. I don't know. By the way, I don't have an answer for this. Is why the beauty of asking the question is I don't get to answer. I don't have to answer it.
Not knowing their situation. The problem is I don't know their exact situation, because going back to your depends, like it depends, right? Like I don't know their financial situation. So for all I know, maybe they're like, this is our best way forward in terms, like we're making so much money off of D2. Why would we do anything else? I don't know. But from a player perspective, it just, no matter how you explain away why you do things, it still hurts to see something that you're like, I paid for this, or I had this previously, and now you took it away. That's just a hard thing to do. So from my end, like I would say, no, let's make it D3.
Oh,
Let's build a game knowing the type of thing that we want to get into in the future. If it's going to expand at this rate, how do we better plan and prepare for that, and then come at people with a different offer? But that also means that, again, financials. In 2 years, maybe they run out of money, and that was never a possibility. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll speculate as soon as Hans answers.
Okay, sure. I think what's happening right now is they're looking at other games in this space, and I play a lot of Warframe and Path of Exile, and those kinds of lifestyle games never take away anything, basically, right? You can go in and play in Warframe a PvP mode that nobody plays. I'm not going to say nobody plays, but it's not. It doesn't cater to the larger audience, and that's something they tried. They put it in there and supported it for a while, and now it's just like it's still in there. I think Bungie goes, you know what? We're gonna err on the side of quality, and we're gonna make sure that our game is good in this entire span of all the features and all the modes and all the things in there. So we're gonna make sure that if we can't ensure quality on these specific things, and they're removing some of the things that they could measure were the least, impactful. I'm thinking they said something like some of the parts they're removing had like 0.5% of all playtime in it, but it had 5% of the install size of the game. So, as games are getting bigger and bigger, I read that Call of Duty is approaching 200 gigabytes of install size. Yeah. And that's ridiculous. We need to pare the product down. We need to make sure it's a little bit more slim.
Yeah.
So but still though, you still can't just remove stuff, right?
So what would you have done then?
Well, I mean, I'm just happy they're sticking to their guns. We're going to see more and more of this in the future. Live service games are going to have to come down in size, but Bungie's
Hans,
out
I think
there
you're
first.
Right.
Yeah,
I think you're right. So I think the beauty of being an armchair kind of quarterback, so to speak, the beauty of the American term, I guess, is that we get to kind of speculate on what we know and what we don't know in the situation. But I think it is a confluence of a couple of things. I think D2 is just too big. And when you build that wide and that deep of a game, it's hard for two reasons to continue. One, anything that you build next, your next sequel kind of has to be bigger, right? Has to be better, has to be, or at least by and large, that's kind of the conventional wisdom. You can get smarter and choose a different direction, but it's hard, at least in the same kind of linear sequel, to do that. And so that would be a monstrosity of a project.
Yes.
And without Activision helping co-fund and everything else, I think that it's almost a non-starter in some ways. Me speculating, but I think that's one piece of it. The other piece is, when you look at your paths forward, you probably saw that you were able to sustain a certain audience, and you saw some of those numbers, to your point, Hans, that said there's not a lot of people playing this. We have too wide of a game, and we want to service a part of the game that we know that people like most and continue to innovate in that area. And we want to do that, full stop. And that was our path forward. I think it was the kind of the confluence of those two situations that probably led down this path. And they probably didn't have, because to your point, I don't think anybody would have wanted to say we want to remove content. From a marketing standpoint, that's never as rarely. Well, I haven't uncovered it. A good story, no matter how many times you kind of spin it and position it, and because one, gamers are just too smart for that stuff, and taking away something, even if it's good for the kind of the long term, nobody or rarely sees that. So yeah, it's an interesting. I will say. Sorry, go ahead, Paulie.
I was saying, people might in 6 to 12 months be like, man, I'm glad they did that. You know what? That actually paid out. But the initial couple months, people are just going to be super raw about I had a thing, now that thing's gone.
Yep.
Even if they didn't use it, it doesn't matter. On an emotional level is where everybody's at right now.
100%.
I agree.
Like those stages of not grief. Oh, Jesus, no, but even just we're just interacting with conflict. There's still a denial period and an anger period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think, though, I do appreciate, I think the gaming industry as a whole has to do more of this, which is, there are decisions. And I think the problem is there's kind of a myriad of different decisions, some in good faith and some in bad faith. And so we don't always have a great track record. But there are a lot of good faith decisions for the long term that have to be made. that aren't necessarily good for the short term. And the ability to have the courage to both make those decisions, see them through, and not bend, which all too often, because you will get a certain amount of kind of backlash from the community, I think is where the industry needs to have, is that maturity to be able to make those decisions, move forward. But I think the first starting point is trust with your community. Yeah. Some certainly have it and some don't. Some had it and broke it, and vice versa, right? And so that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But I do appreciate those types of decisions and hope that they pay out.
But hey, so what are some of the benefits of running a functioning live service game? Because those are a bunch of the trials, right? Trials and tribulations. What are the upsides of this?
I don't know if we want to keep that to a separate one, but I mean, the upside is like just you're able to establish trust and build a community and like build a fan base that can go on a journey with you. And there's something about having that commonality and going through those things with people that is just really engaging and kind of rewarding. That's things I enjoy.
Yeah. Here's what I think. I think this is just the reality of the development environment today that I've seen, or at least experienced, which is very few games are delivered, are highly polished, and are perfect on day one, right? I don't think that I've had a game yet that I've played that doesn't have a day one or day zero patch.
Right.
And so I think part of the beauty of running a live service is that you get to kind of hone and refine that experience more and more and deliver more and more content. And I think the experience just gets much and much better. So that's like one piece that now that sounds like a negative, because it's like, you start out as, well, just ship a complete game. Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I think you have a better read for your audience, especially new IP games, and you can deliver more content, more interesting experiences, and really kind of fine tune it. The other thing, to Paul, your point of just getting to know your community and having that relationship over time, it's powerful, it's fun, it's interesting. I think it's what, as much as there's that much hype to kind of launching a game, you feel like you're more connected with your community when you have a service.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a rare thing, though. Not a lot of game studios will have that kind of success on a game where they can feasibly take it and work with it years and years. And I would say no game has an opportunity to really show what its best side at launch. I really do believe that. I mean, look at a lot of games coming out right now from Nintendo still has patches and updates and stuff, even though Nintendo has been known for a long time to be sort of, they're like, you'll never update like a Game Boy ROM. You can't patch that, you can't ship an update to that. But nowadays, I mean, even Animal Crossing now has tons of new updates and features and stuff.
I'm okay with that, by the way. I think that, I think in a world where we have constantly kind of updates that are done in the background because I think that what people respond to negatively is the disruption. And if you can do that in a more seamless way, and you can get really smart, because they do it in other industries. They're actually pretty smart about that, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Spotify. And it's more, I know, challenging with gaming, for sure. It's more complex, it's more sophisticated, and there's just more events and more things going on. But if that becomes the world, I think, and it's pretty seamless in the way you morph the experience, wow, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like, how you design your games, or sorry, I should say just build your games as a live service. You allow yourselves the opportunities to do that, whereas older games, you'd max out everything so that you could jam everything out of the disk, leave no room for improvement anywhere. You just maximize the engine, whatever you want to do, and it's just there's so much game packed into that thing. And there's times where you do that now with a game that's intended to be a live service, and then in a couple months you're trying to update the game and you realize like we've kind of run out of pixels that we can generate on screen at any one time because we've jammed in so many things. But we're like, part of what we want to add to the game generates pixels on the screen in 12 new ways.
Yeah.
What do we do?
So I got a question for you. So you got one job as two different roles. Which one do you choose? You get to work on a service title, right? It's in service. It's been in for a while. Or pre-launch leading into a new IP, new development project. Which one do you choose and why?
Oh my. How about this then? I know mine as well. I'm just gonna say. So, being able to have the opportunity to work on a live service game or a game that's appreciated by an audience that keeps coming back is hugely rewarding, and I have that. I'm able to work on Vermintide 2, which is something that's been around for a while now, and people still love that game a lot. They have a lot of opinions on that, but it's still something that we keep supporting. And I do believe that a game is something that you can release to an audience and then have players' feedback and the way they play the game and interact with the game kind of feedback into the way we develop games. And you don't do that with a movie, right? You do that maybe with TV shows. You ship a first season and you see how people feel about that and you shift around stuff. But with games get better when you shift them kind of half baked and let the interactions between the audience and the studio kind of transform them. So yeah, absolutely. I love working on live service stuff.
So service is your answer.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Paul?
My answer is the exact opposite, mainly because I don't have much experience working on a game from like concept through pre-production into production. Most of my career as a developer has come in the last like third of production before launch, and then everything in post-launch.
Interesting.
So I've always been thinking about, what do you do after the game's out? What do you do after the game's out? How do we adapt for that? It's never been so much of how do we plan for this stuff? What are the steps that you go through to like really map this stuff out way in advance so that you know what you're working towards, instead of just going like, somebody's already laid out these plans, just go fulfill them, and then after that, make it up as you go. Yeah. So it's very different for me.
It's good to see both sides. I'll say my general experience has been both within the marketing discipline and I think in other disciplines, my perception, and this is a gross generalization, so I'll beg for forgiveness later when I get hate mail. But is that most people still in the industry gravitate to new launches because it's shiny, it's exciting. Yep. There's a certain rush that happens as part of it. And I think to your point, Paul, some of the motivations there of just like being able to create and plan for something sometimes it's more sexy. Which is, I think, a problem. I think we have to, like I said before, I think grow up more as an industry. And services, you're seeing now that it's 70 and 80% of many of the total kind of franchise revenue of a product. Mm-hmm. And that, that has a lot to do with the fact that people want to stay with titles longer, and which means that you need to have the right talent and the right focus in service. But it's an interesting, like I said, this is a topic that I could continue to kind of rotate and go through for quite some time.
What was your answer, Mike? What do you
prefer? Oh, that's good. Pens. Just joking. No. I actually, I've done both in my career. I don't know if I have a strong preference. It is probably more to the new stuff. That's the truth. I think there's some, but like, right now my team is working on service stuff and I really dig it for a different reason. They're just different skill sets, different problems to solve. I don't know. That's a good question. I might, I'm at that point in my career right now, to be honest. I kind of said new, and I'm going to backtrack on that. I think, here's why I like service right now. Just right now. My opinion could change tomorrow. There's such I think, an immaturity in that side of the business. There's so much that we have to learn, whether it's from our mobile brothers and into the HD space. And there's so many new muscles that we have to build and we have to think through. And I think we still have to define to kind of grow up and to become a really rich service. And to that point earlier, which is some should be service oriented, some should not be service oriented. Like that thinking is still early days. And I love being kind of at the epicenter of that type of problem where you just don't know the answer.
Right. You
have to go figure it out. I think launches are kind of tried and true, and you can certainly have different ways to launch a product. But they're formulaic in many ways. Service is not, actually.
No. It's not a solved problem at all.
No, I think just jumping back, Mike, so that it doesn't sound like I jumped on I want to do pre-production because I think it's sexy. It's more just like I said, it's a lack of experience. I've never done it. So for me, I want to know what that feels like. But I think that the problem you described with a lot of people in the industry kind of over focusing on a new launch all the time, I think it's very real, and I think it's something that is challenging when you're trying to motivate teams that have never worked on a live game to work on a live game. They're like, I don't like this. I want the rush of a new thing. And at least sometimes when I have conversations with people, I'm like, well, but you're going to be shipping something. It's just not a grandiose thing. It's chunky and it will last. You'll do it every month. Like you're shipping something every month, and I think that some people just don't want to do that.
Yeah,
it's like just different. But I think, like you said, it's a different muscle people need to kind of get into. Get into the right mindset for.
Yeah, I agree though. I agree. I think it. That is definitely a problem, but we'll see. Like I said, the beauty of the live service space right now is it is pretty competitive. Some people are figuring it out. Those that are excelling, and they're building the right communities. Mm-hmm. They're accelerating their kind of growth in their audience in a way that you haven't really seen in HD over the last couple of years, and that's promising as a guy in the marketing and kind of the gaming side to see. And it's just a matter of, can you actually find a path to do the same?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about with live service development, shipping, marketing, selling. Is cloud gaming going to solve all of our download woes? But maybe that's for a different episode. And let's get on to the next part. We usually have something we like to show off here. We think we like to call it "That's fucking cool," because we find stuff that people post or stuff that's happening right now that we go, "That's fucking cool." I've been living in a bubble this last week, so I don't actually have anything that made me go, "That's fucking cool." But Mike, maybe you have something.
I always have that's fucking cool shit. I mean, forget the fact that my cool factor is down to about a 0 or a 1. I still have an eye for things that are much cooler than I am. So I love to cook. You guys know this. And every now and then I'll wear an apron because you don't want to get anything on my fly outfit. That's my horrible attempt at trying to be cool. Let's just, if you just throw dope and fly out there, people might think you're cool.
Those are still relevant,
Kids love those.
Is that what it is?
Kids are down
this is
with
the beauty
it.
with.
No, I'm not giving it an attempt at it.
Okay, I got to get the cheat sheet for my kid. That's like, what are the cool words? So I can just introduce one every 4 word, and everybody's like, he's cool. Mm-hmm. Anywho. So I like to cook, but I've been looking for a new apron. I stumbled across this on Uncrate, which I love that site. Every now and then will go in it, and I couldn't. I was thinking of Polly actually when I looked at it, and it's a Darth Vader apron, and it's totally in character. It's they describe it as we can't recall if Darth Vader has ever cooked. Did he even eat? But if he had, we're pretty sure that he's worn this apron. That type of stuff. It's it's the only thing that's missing is the lightsaber, tongs and the spatula. But I think that's just I looked at that and I'm like I'm a sucker for anything that's a little bit a little geekish and comes out of the universes that I love, and Star Wars is certainly one of those. So that's fucking cool.
Yeah, I'm showing it right now. It's $125 though.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. But
that's what you get for an officially licensed apron.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Darth Vader little figurine, though, will cost you that anyway, as Paul would tell you.
Probably, yes.
Just saying. That can be a real-life stand-up Darth Vader cook. So that's fucking cool.
Right.
I think mine's going to be, we kind of said that we weren't going to jump on some of the PlayStation 5 stuff earlier. My thing, my thing is actually the game Stray, which has it seemingly play as a cat. And as a cat person, I am super excited for this. We have a cat Slack channel at work, and all the everybody else in there was kind of going nuts over like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I don't know. I thought that was really fucking cool. It's just like, this is a game you get to play as a cat with robots. Like, I don't know. It's just wacky. I love it.
By the way, we got to start keeping score of how many times Paul mentions his cat or cats. And how many times I mentioned dogs and my dogs. Although I don't have any games around dogs. Yeah, I feel like I'm behind. Right? Yeah.
I can't. I'm thinking like Paperboy, but isn't there a dog chasing the guy on the bike? No.
Oh my God, Paperboy, that's hose. You are so old.
I'm down with the arcade games.
Damn.
True story. I had an arcade game as a kid. Asteroids. Still have it.
Like an actual arcade in your house?
Yeah. Well, not in this house.
No.
Back in the States, yeah.
Well,
it's in storage right now.
Well. I didn't even have a Nintendo. So, all right.
That's a great way to end the podcast.
Yeah, okay. Just bring it down a bit. But I think with that, though, on that sour note, we will end this. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and stay safe out there. Thank you all for listening. If you want to see more episodes of this podcast, please check out patchandcrash.com. Also, follow us on Twitter @patchandcrash, where we post about new episodes or live streams.